I am the chair, Councilman Chris Johnson from the 7th District. At this time, I will do a roll call of members present. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Bracy at large.
Present.
Um, Councilmember Spadola at large.
Present.
And Council President Congo.
Here.
And Councilman Field is excused. And I believe, do we have anyone on Zoom, Marshall? I can't see the screen. Okay. Also would like to recognize Councilmember Darby as well from the 2nd District. All right. As a friendly reminder, only members of the committee should be making motions in any seconds. And we do have quite a lengthy agenda, so I'm just going to really cut to the chase and get right to it. Now, we are going to have a change in the order of the agenda. Okay, the agenda item number 10 will actually be number 1, okay? We will start with that first, and it is an ordinance, so it does need to be voted on. And this is an ordinance, this is substitute 1 to ordinance 22-033, which is an ordinance to amend chapter 2 and 40 of City Code regarding appointed service city residency requirement. And there is, I guess we have Chief of Staff Washington, the administration, also Human Resources Director Barnes as well, who is speaking on that item. So as a brief opening, just wanted to, before we go into question and answer, this legislation has been something that's been a long time coming, and it has been something that has been debated and has been mentioned several times during the city budget debate that we just recently had this spring. Essentially, this is amending the allowances for who needs to live in the city and who does not. And what we do is, council, we look at ways we can improve city services, point blank. And we found through the budget process and talking with several directors that there is an issue with the services and even maintaining personnel roles. It's a very competitive job market. It's been asymmetric since the pandemic. Other jurisdictions are also dealing with this, is that we're getting priced out. So we believe loosening our requirements on a temporary basis, along with looking at other incentive programs with the city, and as well as looking at the, I believe there's a wage study we're doing as well. So we believe doing all these things will help us attract and retain the best and brightest in the city of Wilmington. That includes, highly technical positions in public works. That includes positions on the front lines, such as the most important, some of the most important members are our street crews and our sanitation workers. There's problems even filling those spots. So we're just loosening requirements, and I believe we have individuals from the administration here to speak on this, and we'll go through a slideshow. Then we'll do some question and answers, as this is a very important matter for the city. So Director Barnes, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, and honorable members of council. I'll go through a brief slide presentation to give you some updated and current information. I know I've had a sit down with many of you probably about 6 to 8 weeks ago, and then we had some conversation during the budget hearing. But this presentation here would be some of the most current information that we have in terms of the impact. So with that, next slide, please. What's the issue here? The city is experiencing some recruitment challenges, and those recruiting challenges have the ability to impact and compromise service delivery. So we have a high vacancy rate, and I did the vacancy rate for our civilian positions only. I excluded the current police academy that's, currently recruiting for. We have a 12.5% vacancy rate for civilian positions, and anything over 10% for the government sector is considered unhealthy. So we're 2.5% above the vacancy rate. 10 is considered healthy, 5 is considered excellent, but anything over 10 is considered unhealthy. So we currently have 99 vacancies, but when you exclude the police officers and crossing guards, that leaves us with about 67 vacancies. And of those 67 vacancies, 63% of those are in positions that provide direct services to the citizens. They are in Parks and Rec, they are in Public Works, they are in License and Inspection, and they are civilians within the police department. Next slide, please. And so we've experienced some issues with chronic vacancies. So we complete a vacancy report every week to update the recruitment that we've had within the previous week and where we are. As of today, we talked previously about having a challenge with attracting CDL drivers, and that is something that is a nationwide challenge. But we are having a challenge, and we've had 4 equipment operator 4 positions and 3 equipment operator 5 positions. Now these are the people that operate our heavy equipment. They are people that drive various equipment. We have 4 vacancies of approximately 6 months in duration for the equipment operator 4. We have 3 vacancies at the equipment operator 5 of about 9 months in duration. So you can imagine these people are some of your street cleaners, are some of your people that are doing the, working on water mains and things of that nature. In the public safety area, this is an area that we consistently struggle with, our emergency call operators and our emergency communication specialists. There is a bidding war, quite frankly, throughout the state for these positions. Some agencies are offering, signing bonuses of upwards of $10,000, and they're offering retention bonuses. We had, in the emergency call operators, we have 3 vacancies of 6 months in duration. And for the emergency communication specialist, so 1 takes the calls and 1 dispatches the calls. We had 3 candidates that were selected in January of 2023, so that's less than 5 months ago. They've already resigned. And then we currently have 2 additional vacancies. So these positions are either could potentially impact public safety and does impact public safety. And with the CDL drivers, certainly that impacts service delivery as well. Those aren't our only vacancies. We have other vacancies as well, but I just highlighted those because those are areas that we consistently have challenges with. Next slide, please. So what has our response been to this? We're not just sitting on our hands saying this is our problem. Let's, let's try to find, a one-size-fits-all solution. So we've been hard at work at this. I'd say at least for the past 2 years, I would at least say 18 months. So we've done some work to improve our hiring process. The code does give residency as a preference. There's 3 preferences: veterans, residency, and hiring from within. And so we have refined our process probably nearly a year ago. We've refined our process to focus, to have a concentrated focus. So all things being equal, the last 3 questions are they a resident? Are they a veteran? Are they an internal candidate? So we make sure that you'll see as I go forward, it's on our documents, that's the work that we do to make sure that we are focusing and concentrating on trying to at least attract city residents and giving them, when they do apply, the preference. We have increased our collaborations and partnerships, and I don't want to be redundant from what was said at the budget hearing, but we've increased our community partnerships with the Department of Labor and the Hope Commission. We're exploring partnerships with Job Corps, Deltec, their Office of Work-Based Learning for internships, and the Polytech Adult Education Trade and Apprenticeship programs. So we're looking at community partners. We have had some successful partnership with the Hope Commission as a second chance employer. We have participated in 7 job fairs so far this year, 5 hosted by Goodwill, 2 hosted by the Department of Labor, and we are hosting our own job fair for city jobs on June 15th. June 15th. It will be held at the Hicks Anderson Community Center, and we will be focusing on our city jobs. We were back and forth with whether or not we would include others to allow them to advertise for jobs, but we're focusing on our jobs and trying to, fix our issue. So I wanted you to know that we've done that. We've expanded our advertisement. We don't just post it to the city's website and post it on the board and hope that somebody applies. We advertise in trade publications. We're working with the career offices of local colleges and universities. All of our job posting goes to all of the community centers in and around the city. We advertise in professional associations. We do social media as well, and we currently would love to welcome you as a partner. We have cards when we have jobs that scan the QR code and it will list the jobs that we currently have. And so when you're at your civic or community association meetings, that gives you the opportunity to also help us in this situation. We've also evaluated our job descriptions, and that's done every time we post a job. The first thing we do before we post a job is look at the job description. We send it to the hiring manager. Is it still current? Are there changes that need to be made? But we evaluate those changes from an HR perspective to eliminate unnecessary requirements. The HR industry is moving away from formalized education. There is absolutely a need for formalized education in many jobs, but for some jobs, we're moving to certifications and micro-credentials. So the four-year degree, we're looking at, okay, do they have a certification that, gives them the same required knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform the function. And so we have been doing that for quite some time, moving towards eliminating the unnecessary requirements as a barrier to employment. Next slide, please. So our talent acquisition process, the city website, social media, and other websites, then you submit your application. There's a certification process where the HR administrators are looking at, your application, your resume, and balancing that against the job description and the job requirements. We interview the candidates, we extend an offer, and it's like, welcome to the city of Wilmington. So that's the process, in a nutshell. Obviously, it's a little bit more detailed than that, but that's the high level process in a nutshell. Next slide, please. And so you'll see here that the certification list, so once you apply for a job, we narrow it down to who's going to be interviewed and who's certified to be interviewed. That's the top, and that's, there's qualifications, work history, interview score, technical knowledge, specific skills. What we do now is we have updated it, so you'll see like qualifications, we rate that, we rate your work history, you get your interview score, and then each person that's on the panel would say whether they would recommend hiring you or not. Once we get through all of that, then we go to the status. Are they a resident? Are they an internal candidate? Are they a veteran? Right? So we make sure that we have included in this process the preference for the resident. The code speaks to, when qualifications are, relatively equal, the resident gets the nod, and that's where we make sure that takes place. Next slide, please. Just want to talk a little bit about the impact that residency has had on recent recruitment activities. There was an administrative clerk we were looking to hire in the wage tax division. That individual withdrew from the process. We called for an interview and they said, thanks, but no thanks. And what I'm telling, these individuals that I'm sharing with you are all people that cited residency. Sanitation driver in Public Works declined. There's a GIS technician where it's pending, but he has cited two things: that he would have to pay for parking and he would have to be a resident. Desktop engineer, they withdrew from the process. Next slide, please. We've got civilians in the police department, emergency call operators who, declined due to residency and being able to get a job doing similar work in a place that did not have a residency requirement. They were a property technician that withdrew from the process similarly. There was a senior program director in the real estate and housing department. All of these people are saying that, thanks, but they're declining the positions. And just when people have options, they exercise them. And so if there's a similar job and one has this restriction and one does not have this restriction, people will tend to go to the place where there's not a restriction. And that's what, that's kind of what we're seeing. It is a employee market. People are able to name their price. People are able to name their work environment. So, if people are saying, I don't want your job because I can't work from home. People are saying, I don't want your job because I have to live in a certain place. People can and will are making decisions when you have guardrails and barriers in place that impact employment. Next slide, please. So what's the proposition here? So we strengthen our candidate pipeline and we're able to fill crucial vacancies. What does that mean for the city of Wilmington? It would improve service delivery for our community. There'd be improved productivity because right now, because of these vacancies, employees are either required to work overtime, and currently employees, there used to be a time when people wanted to work a lot of overtime. Now people value time away from work. And so, there is a situation there. Improved employee engagement so that they don't feel the burden of doing the work that should be done by more employees, and cost savings. So there is a real cost associated with vacancies and a real cost associated with having people perform jobs at a premium price, i.e. overtime. So I think that's probably the end of the presentation. I only wanted to focus on things that had, particularly those recruitment challenges that you had not previously heard about. These are all very recent recruiting challenges. So Mr. Chair, that concludes the presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director Barnes. And I have a few questions that I wanted to clarify for the record. So the first question is there any geographical restriction to this proposed measure?
The legislation as it exists now eliminates the requirement. There is no geographical restriction now.
Okay.
As it exists right now.
Okay. And then also, does this would this apply retroactively, or would it only be going forward? So new employees hired on, say, if it did pass, that date forward.
That's probably a question more appropriate for the law department. I can't answer that one.
Because it didn't indicate it in there, and so I think we may need some clarifying language.
Okay. And so I guess let me ask the question so that I have an understanding. If it's prospective for people that have been hired.
Yes, so say January 1st, 2024 forward, or does it apply for people who say are doing their time right now? Because I think there could be argument both ways. I think ideally, if it's new employees are allowed, I think we would have to probably go retroactively and apply it to old, current employees.
Excuse me, you mean current employees who have not met the requirements?
Yes, who are doing their time and their, what does that do to them? So it may be a law department question that we need clarifying language, but from my reading of it, again, I did not write the ordinance. I think we may need some clarifying language in there. Because I imagine intent would be that if this did go in effect, current employees who were building towards their clock would not be restricted anymore, correct?
So I guess I want to make sure that I clarify my purpose. My purpose was to talk about the recruitment challenges and the impact. I can't speak to that intent. I think that's probably more appropriately for the law department because I don't want to misspeak.
Okay. I mean, just in terms of being a director, do you think it's fair to apply it to employees who are currently employed with the city?
I think if you're going to lift it, it probably, speaking for Charlotte, not the administration, if you were going to lift it, I would think you just need to lift it, pull the Band-Aid off and be done, because to have to say, well, no, you were hired this, and you still need to be in, and then we'd have to engage and monitor that and monitor compliance with that, and the legislation as it exists removes the residency review board. So what would be the enforcement arm for those people that would still be under the requirement? So Charlotte's position would be that it should probably just be done away with altogether, but I'm not, I need to be very clear that I have not spoken with the administration on that, and so I'm not speaking on behalf of the administration as it relates to that.
Just lastly, I don't know if there's clarifying language we need to add. Does this apply for uniformed employees as well? Because what I'm thinking of is, of course, our police and firefighters. There's implication there as well.
The legislation as is written says regular employees, and they are regular employees. So,
Do you know if it's in their current collective bargaining agreements that they have to live in the city?
well, the residency requirement applies to all employees. So, in this, the only CBA that it is in, and it's not in there as a requirement, it's in there as a definition, would be the FOP.
Okay.
But if you remove the requirement, then it will be removed. There is also a statute in police and fire contracts that says, it's ordinance and statutes provision, is that if an ordinance or statute is drafted and passed, that changes, if it's more favorable to them, then they get to take advantage of it. If it's more restrictive to them, then it doesn't apply to them.
Okay. And
So.
from my understanding, I think the FOP has clarified that they are in support of this. At least I believe council was given
Okay.
a letter, just for the record. I believe they are supportive of this measure. All right, that's all the questions I have for now. I'm going to open up the floor. Does anyone in chambers have any questions first?
Yes, I do.
Yes, yes,
Thank
Vice
you,
Chair.
Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Director Barnes. You have mentioned some of the individuals that were hired and then they resigned. Was your purpose for sharing that information was to share the vacancies or what? Because I'm just trying to understand, like, if they were hired and they resigned within a couple months, to me, you know, it also speaks to the working environment as well, since they got hired and they decided to resign within a short period of time. So I was just curious as to what made you use that as an example.
That example was to demonstrate that there are bidding wars as it relates to the emergency call operators and the emergency communication specialists. They have options and they are exercising those options. We have, it's a constant churn with always recruiting for that position because they don't stay long and they don't stay, to be clear, it's a shift work job. Okay, so there's only certain people that want to work a shift work job. Even when you get those individuals in this environment where they can go someplace else and either get a signing bonus or get a retention bonus or not have the barrier of living in the city of Wilmington, they do that. So I'm just sharing that they started and we couldn't even keep them and they left and then we had to start the process all over again, and that's a very real impact on public safety.
The turnover.
Yes.
A follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
As it relates to the jobs when they're posted, do we include anywhere initially that you have to be a resident of the city of Wilmington? Because I heard you mention that some of the individuals went through the process, the interview process, and then at some point they declined because of the residency. So we do not post that early on before we actually interview applicants?
We absolutely do. Every posting has a city's residency requirement for the city of Wilmington. And it says right on the job posting that city residency is required within 6 months of employment. So that's on every application. And then, every posting, you apply. Once you apply, we do an initial screening. And before we even call you for the interview and do an initial assessment, we remind you again of the residency requirement. When you come into your interview and you sit down and you have an interview with us, one of the questions at the end of the interview is, are you aware of the city's residency requirement? Yes. Do you have any problems fulfilling the residency requirement? No. We then, when we extend the job offer to you, we get the question, so I really have to live in the city? And it's like, yes, you do. And some of them will accept and then call back and say, never mind. And others will say right then, I'm no longer interested. So we absolutely, before we extend a job offer to you, we've probably had at least 3 conversations with you about residency.
Okay. The reason you know why I asked that question, because it sounded like the applicant went through the process, and at some point, he decided that he declined because of the residency. So I'm thinking, like, didn't they know that before they actually went through the process? So, okay, so that's all I have for now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Council President?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess since I've been on council, I have always leaned on Director Barnes for just flat out transparency and information. And I was a person who at first was against this ordinance, but now I'm a sponsor, just based on information, based on how it's impacting city services, and based on some of the information that she just shared with us. I don't think that she has any reason to sugarcoat anything. Not saying that anybody thinks that, but I know there are some concerns that, why is this ordinance coming into play now, and it's going to do a disservice to Wilmington residents. And I guess one of my main sticking points is that right now the requirement is only for 5 years. I could see if it were, as long as you're an employee with the city, you have to live in the city, but that's not the case. It's only 5 years, and right now we're asking for residents potential employees to uproot their families, possibly uproot their children's school districts, and come in the city just for 5 years. And we're losing the battle. There are bidding wars. People have choices. I just think that it's the right time for us to kind of open up our system from what it currently is right now, and do what's going to be best for our residents, because they're the ones who are suffering. I think one of the best examples that I've heard lately is when I asked a question about special pickup, and it used to be around a week at the most, but now I think it's 3 to 4 weeks for residents to even get special pickup, because we just don't have the enough staff to man that kind of demand. So again, I just think that it makes sense. I think that that we just have to take a look at the facts, and I'm glad that she was able to present even more facts to us today. And I hope that we can get this out of committee and just put it before all of council. I hope it's not held. I hope we at least allow all of council to chime in and vote on this. I wrote down a couple other things. I guess I've always believed that it's really the person. It's not where they live. And we can take for example, our current chief, who I think is probably one of the best chiefs that I've been around. He has brought tremendous improvement in morale. He's just a good dude, and he doesn't live in the city. I mean, he's from the city, but he doesn't live here. And I think for us to think that it's more of where they live versus the person, I think that we're making a mistake. And I give an examples of our own chief of staff. I think that most council members, if not all council members, really appreciate our chief of staff. And if she lived in Newark, I think that she would still be just as effective. And if we weren't able to have her just because she lived in Newark, I think that our council wouldn't be as strong as we are. So just with those 2 examples right there, I just think that it's time for us to just be more competitive with our surrounding cities and counties. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, Director.
Thank you, President Congo, for your words about my transparency. For the sake of transparency, I will tell you that I have not always had the position that I currently have as it relates to residency. When I was interviewed for the position to become a member of Mayor Purzycki's administration, we talked about residency, and I told him at that point that I was a strong proponent of residency. I had been in my role at that time about 4 years, and I did see that it was having an impact on recruiting, but I thought that there were ways that we could potentially think about managing residency. 6 years later, I'm a believer. I mean, the facts aren't the facts are there, and the feedback that I get from my team, you know, time after time again about the challenges that they're having. You know, one of these positions, it was not only the first candidate, it was the top 2 candidates that declined for residency. So it's definitely impacting getting your top candidates that who are willing to work. So, you know, if I offered it to candidate 1 and they said no, and I offered it to candidate 2 and they said no, you know, am I really at a place where I want to go to candidate 3, 4, and 5? Is that the best look for the city? And I would dare say no. So if you run the tapes, you probably heard me talk about residency differently than I am now. So I wanted to be very transparent in that regard. Also, as it relates to your point around it's the person as opposed to where you live. If someone doesn't live in Wilmington and are not performing as if Wilmington is a priority, that's a performance issue. And that will be handled as a performance in your performance evaluation. So if someone is underperforming for whatever reason, you know, that becomes a performance issue, and not necessarily I have to live here to be vested here. I moved here when I started with the city. I can move and have not moved. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you very much, Director Barnes. And for the record, I just wanted to add that I am supportive of this latest version, as well as similar to Council President. So I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. All right. And I believe we have Councilmember Darby on Zoom.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Chair. I do have a few comments. I am not in support of this legislation. I believe that there's way more work that can be done in regards to engaging Wilmingtonians, improving work environment. I know people who were not in the roles that you mentioned earlier, where there was like a quick turnover of them leaving, where it was just a basic admin role in public works, and they literally left within a few days because of the toxic work environment. There's two other examples I can give too, in regards to the work environment that the city provides for people to work in. It's toxic, and people leave quick, or they stay because they want the benefits, so they just go through with the toxic work environment. And then my other thing is, I just think we could do better recruitment. And then I hate that we say like they're doing their time like it's some jail sentence. But we also have like HBCU week. We encourage Black children to go to HBCUs. We give them scholarships, and then they come home and don't have a job. Why don't we create a pipeline for those students to come into the city government to work? Like, there's so many other things that could be done. And it's bigger than just the person. Yeah, I think, you know, for the most part, you could be a good person and not live in Wilmington and care about Wilmington. Yes. I don't think that's for the majority, right? There's a lot of negative perception about Wilmington and Wilmingtonian people for people who don't live in the city. We can't ignore that and how Wilmingtonian people will be treated. We also can't ignore economics and the importance of it's bigger than just the individual. When you live in a community, you spend money in that community, right? And we talk about economics, we're talking about taxes, we're talking about budget, we just had a whole budget, and we're talking about money. And the best way to build the city is through economics. When people live where they work, they groceries, they send their kids to school here. They might send them to a private school down the street. They might send them to the public school, and the public school get money for each kid that's there. It's called economics, right? It's bigger than just individuals, about a whole societal structure in regards to the importance of living where you work and spending money in that area. So I am not in support of it economically, and also because we have not done I believe the city has not done enough in regards to recruitment, and the work environment is toxic. I have not seen anything that's done to try to improve that. I don't see on that slideshow like ways that the work environment was improved for employees. And I know offhand, y'all want names, I can send y'all names of the people who literally quit in a few days. It wasn't those the position I can't remember the name of the position I was mentioning earlier. It wasn't that position with shift work. It was a regular 9 to 5. And they said, oh no, I'd rather go do something else. And then we also talk about pay. We didn't talk about, and I don't think it was mentioned, or maybe I missed the part where we're currently going through a study of looking at wages for every single position throughout the government. Why don't we wait for that to happen, right? So we're not competitive when it comes to wages. So why don't we wait for the wage thing to happen to figure out how we can fix that so that Wilmingtonians can have access to those wage increases, right? Why don't we wait to do better recruitment with our HBCU week program? Like, to me, it's like false, like, advertisement. We're telling these kids to go to HBCUs, we're giving them scholarship money, and then we come home and we're saying we're just hiring whoever, whatever, from whatever, wherever, and we're not prioritizing the people that we sent to go get this degree. So that's just my opinion. I am not in support of it, but it seems like it's going to pass. The mayor administration must be working around doing what he needs to do to get this passed. And so I know he's working the council, but what I do know is that I think it's unfortunate that we're going to just allow public safety, our fire department and our police department to at least not have that 5-year requirement, even though I know most of them still rent out and act like they live in their places in the city of Wilmington. I know that's happening for a fact. And even though I know that's happening, we still should not just allow them to just do it. I think there still should be rules and regulations that they have to follow, and then we find a tighter way of making sure that they stick to the 5-year mark, right? Maybe we need to start running reports on who owns the Delmarva bill or the water bill versus who's on the mortgage lease, right? There's a way to do that through Ptolemaic, but that's a whole nother conversation. So I don't think we're doing enough. I'm not in support of this resolution at all, this legislation in regards to hiring people who are prioritizing people who are living here who need jobs, and where the marketing is, where I am, I haven't seen a job fair in my neighborhood. Like, those things are not happening. And I haven't heard of any. So like that part, like the marketing, and I'm a council person, the recruitment piece just isn't happening for me. So I'm not in support. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else on Zoom? Councilman
Yes.
Spadola, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am in support of the legislation. And I think the main reason is really the city doesn't hire in a vacuum. And the city is suffering from a hiring perspective from the same macroeconomic conditions that companies all over the country are. It's two things specifically. It's an extremely tight labor market. It's a job seekers market, as Ms. Barnes said. And the other factor compounding the problem for us when we want people to move into the city is the housing market. We've got a major supply glut of homes coming onto the market, and we also have interest rates at decades high. So you've got people locked. People don't want to sell their house because they don't want to get a new house with a mortgage rate of 7%, on top of the housing appreciation that we've seen over the past few years because of the pandemic. So, in addition to that, I without a doubt, when the wage study comes out, it's going to show that, we should be paying city employees more. And I agree with that. The problem is we don't have the revenue to do it right now. So the more we can increase the amount of people we can hire from, the better services our city residents will receive. Because I think that's what the focus needs to be on, the city residents receiving these services from the employees that are hired to do these jobs, or in this case, the employees that are not being hired. And I also agree that the city needs to get really creative in doing what it can to increase retention and recruitment, whether it's looking at a 4-day work week, working from home. And that's the other component that we haven't even addressed. Corporations all over the globe right now are letting people work from home. And here we are, not only telling people they need to come into the office, but they have to uproot their family at a mortgage rate of 3%, buy something in the city for a mortgage rate of 7%, for a job that isn't competitive with the overall market. So it's just a really tough sell. I think, and I I like how the city is prioritizing hiring veterans and residents. So it's good that residents are still receiving preferential treatment. But I think expanding this, repealing the residency requirement is a win-win. And it's like Ms. Barnes said, this is a different conversation than it was 4 years ago, because the macroeconomic conditions have just changed so dramatically. So I will be supporting it. And at the end of the day, I think council should focus on making Wilmington a city that people that want to live in, and not forcing employees to.
Thank you very much, Councilman Spadola. And I believe we're done our first rounds of council questions. So I'll now open it up to the floor for public comment. Okay, I believe you have an individual on Zoom.
Good evening. My name is Ms.
Miss-
Washington. Everybody calls me Ms. Z.
Yes, Ms. Z,
I
floor is
believe
yours.
that the priority should be a resident, but not limited to, because the reality, it is hard all over, even in major places like New York City. But I don't think that you have exhausted all the means and ways to try to attract residents. I mean, we have people sitting at DHSS offices applying for SNAP and Medicaid who may be willing to work for the city. They just need support. And if they don't have the skills, we should collaborate with agencies or institutions such as Goodwill or the Labor Department to make sure that they can gain those skills, especially if they're saying outright that, yes, I would love to work for the city. I would love to work for this job. They should be supported in that. We already know that the baby boomers have already retired. If they haven't, they're on their way out the door. Generation Xers, we're on our way out the door. And a lot of my peers are saying that they want to work another 10 years. Millennials and Generation Zs, they want to drink lattes and sit at the computer when they want to. They don't want to work for civil service jobs. They don't want people telling them when to clock in and when to clock out. So that says to me that the generation that you need to target is probably Generation X, who's willing to do another 10 years. And toxic work environments, no one wants to do that anymore. When they hear that their friends or their peers, their children, nieces and nephews, like I said, are drinking lattes, eating scones and cupcakes, and they get on the computer when they get ready and they're making decent wages. And then also people, working for Grubhub and Instacart, and you don't have to tell someone that your daughter's sick and you have to stay home. I mean, these are some of the reasons why it's hard for everybody to get people to come into the office every day. But, and some of the young people, they don't even believe in giving people 2 weeks notice. My generation, we were taught to give people 2 weeks notice, call in, come on time. The younger kids don't want to do that. But I really sincerely believe that you're not trying your hardest to recruit people who live in Wilmington. We got the housing department, people who are being subsidized, who want to have want dignity for themselves and their children and not be on subsidies. And so we need to go to DHSS, we need to go to the housing department, and maybe some of the people who've been at Walmart and ShopRite who want to elevate their income and be able to buy a home one day. We need to attract those kind of people. And that's about it for me.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Ms. Z. Okay, we have a Miss Kathleen on Zoom.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
All right, this is Kathleen Patterson, and this is a difficult issue because I do see all the time many positions open in the city and positions reposted, positions left open for many months, maybe even over a year. Ms. Darby and Mr. Spadola both made compelling arguments for both sides of this issue. And the other resident who just spoke, Ms. Z, also did. And what Ms. Z said that I agree with, I believe that we haven't exhausted all the creative as we can be to entice people in a city to apply for these jobs. And that over time, we're going to have to figure out how to make our city attractive for workers to want to be here, because there are so many advantages to living where you work. I do agree with that I don't think this pay scale is very competitive. I see some of the requirements for positions and think that's a lot of work for that pay. Some are in line and others are seem well out of line. It's hard for me to say exactly where I stand on this, but I think that you have not explored all options. Perhaps a bonus or being hired at the higher end of the pay scale for those who are city residents could be an enticement. And I believe that you need to spend some more time thinking of ways to fill these positions. But it's not true that people don't want to work. We have to figure out why people don't want to come and live in our city. I think that's all I'll say.
Okay, all right. And I believe we have Miss Christian Willauer in Chambers.
Thank you. I was here for another topic, but just because this is on the agenda, thank you very much, Chair Johnson and the rest of the members of the committee for the opportunity to speak. I just think that, it's pretty clear that there's some major issues going on in the economy that are, new. The pandemic never happened before. The macroeconomic challenges are new, but maybe they're temporary. So I would just suggest that you don't create a law that applies for the future forever and put like a sunset provision into this so that you can revisit it if conditions change. Because I do agree with some of the comments of the council members that it's very important to have people who work for the city who are committed to the city. And I think one of the best ways to demonstrate that commitment is to live here and spend your money here and, run into your neighbors and understand the issues from not just the perspective of a worker, but also from the perspective of a resident. I think it helps build better service, which I know is a top priority for the city. So I just hope that you'll consider, if you do end up passing this, make sure that you have a chance to revisit it when conditions change. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Believe if there's no one else for public comment, we can jump back to council for any final comments and questions. And I'll start off. I appreciate all the dialogue. We've been, Council President and I have, this is a hard issue. And being a leader in the city during these times has not been easy. And this is something where I believe some of those ideas, making it temporary, as well as maybe the adjustment in pay scale for city residents, I think is something that we need to bring to HR because it is maybe a path forward. But I do definitely, as I stated earlier, support this as we have to deal with where we are now in the hiring crisis. The fact that it takes 3 or 4 weeks to get special pickup, that's a problem for each and every resident. And the fact that currently right now somebody could live right in Newcastle, right across the city line, and not be able to work for the city without having to move into the city to be a sanitation driver. So why should that person who most likely does all their business in the city, most of their family probably lives in the city, but they live right on Route 9 corridor, they can't work for the city. So it's those workers who, especially we want to attract, or someone who lives right across the border in Chester, who wants to work in our city and frequents our city and shops in our city, they should be able to work for our city. So, I certainly think that we can augment this a little bit going forward, but in some, I think we need to move forward. And number one thing is making our city attractive, and we need the workers to help make our city attractive. Because there's many people who are retired and could move out of city and don't. There's still many firefighters. I have many neighbors of mine who are firefighters and Police officers who stay in the city. Retired Chief Ford actually is a neighbor of mine. So, not everyone moves out of city who can move out of city. And if we make our city attractive, make each and every neighborhood, especially the ones we haven't been investing in, neighborhoods such as Hilltop, the East Side, we increase those neighborhoods and we have a nice, strong neighborhoods for middle class folks. And that's why I think we need to strive for. And I know this council, we took a lot of steps with the neighborhood stabilization funds to have the down payment assistance in there, to have the rental assistance. So we have a lot of funds for residents to invest in our city. So we are proactive on this council. So we have folks that they do want to come in the city and find affordable housing. We have the mechanisms to help them. So this is a complicated problem. We're not going to solve it today. This passes, we're not going to solve the issues. But at least this is a step in the right direction. And I definitely look forward to hopefully having the support of my colleagues. Vice Chair Harley?
You can let Director.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to be clear that, and I'm always very solution-oriented. The pay scales for our union employees are negotiated, and so a differential for city employees would have to be negotiated with the union. City residents would have to be negotiated with the unions. The other thing, and I think there was a suggestion made to start them at the top of the pay scale. The CBA's limit where you can start someone. Currently, we have a 7-step pay plan, and the CBA's for at least our AFSCME unions, you cannot start someone above step 4. So there are creative ways that we've tried to do things. I don't want individuals to think that, we are not doing what we can do, but there are some, there are constraints. So I just wanted to make sure that we understood
But
that.
within pay scales, HR can allocate an employee within a pay scale, correct, Director?
A new hire or absolutely, we can start you up to step 4, but I would not be able to start you beyond step 4 for a AFSCME position. And for those that may or may not be aware, 75% of our workforce is unionized and covered by collective bargaining agreements. So their salaries are negotiated, and where they fall and where they step is something that has been negotiated with the bargaining unit, and I just cannot unilaterally make that change.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Director.
All right, thank you,
Vice
Mr.
Chair.
Chair. So, just for the record, I wanted to just share, with the public that a number of the topics and points that Councilmember Darby, as well as Councilmember Spadola, mentioned tonight was already shared, as Director Barnes know, when this topic first came up. And we met with the mayor during the update calls, and then I think we had maybe like 2 meetings where we talked about some of these suggestions in terms of the job fairs. We talked about the bonuses. We talked about the incentives. We talked about the win-wins in terms of how to look at how we can move forward. And what I wanted that to be said on record instead of repeating a lot of what was said in that meeting. We discussed that. A number of the council members we brought before the administration some of the challenges that we saw with relaxing the residency completely. So I wanted that to be on record, and I also wanted to know, Director Barnes, when is the wage study due to be completed?
It's, we thought that it would be completed in the May timeframe. I would say that we are nearing completion. We have drafts of some things, but we're still working through those drafts and working with the consultant on some issues, so.
So have you had the opportunity to see any of the results, even though the report is not completed?
It's draft, and I think, as was said earlier, it probably won't be a surprise that, we aren't as competitive in some areas. So I don't think that would be a surprise to anybody. But I think it would probably be premature for me to discuss what is in a draft report.
Understood. And lastly, my last comment is that the biggest challenge that I see, with this whole topic is that we have almost like a crisis at hand, And then we have suggestions and opportunities that will take maybe a year to 2 or 3 years to go through some of the opportunities and some of the suggestions that have been mentioned previously and even tonight. So you have a crisis that we needed to fill vacancies like yesterday, and then we have these other suggestions that could take a year to 2 years out to see, you know, what would happen. So it is a tough call. Me personally, I would love to see Wilmingtonians with these jobs as much as possible, but based on your process, Wilmington residents are the preferred applicants currently, and that will remain, correct? That will continue to remain.
That's in the code.
It's in the
It's
code.
currently in the code.
Okay.
And so unless council changes it, it will be there.
Okay. All right, that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Bracy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just something really quick. I've enjoyed listening to all the commentary, and I think there were definitely good points made on both sides, but people want their services, and I know my patience sometimes can go thin if, you know, I'm waiting and I'm expecting a service and I'm being told, sorry, we're short-staffed. There have been numerous accounts of, you know, the trash not being collected on the appropriate day because they could only get through half of their route because they were short-staffed. And so now residents are waiting another day or two or until Saturday for the Public Works to finish the route. We talked about special pickup. There are lots of opportunities for growth around staffing challenges here in the city. And so I think that this is an important conversation. I also think that it would be interesting to look at how we add language to maybe have this revisited by the next council. So maybe there is a sunset provision in here that pilots this for 4 or 5 years and then gives the next council the opportunity to look at the data and the outcomes to see if this actually improved our services, and 2, our staffing issues, coupled with what's going to come out from Director Barnes' crew around the wage study, all of the different things. So maybe there is another conversation to be had once we're done with this meeting, before this gets to council floor, where we look at, is that even possible? What would that look like? So that we can go back to the city and say, look, this is a dire issue, it's important, but we also want to make sure that our city residents have first preference, and that we're hiring from within to the extent we can. But we also need to make sure that you have your services, because you're not going to want to hear us say, sorry, we're short-staffed, when your trash is piling up. And we want to make sure, you know, or you're calling 311 and there's no one to pick up the call or no one to call you back. Those are also important pieces of what we have to make a decision around. So I think maybe there's some conversation that we can have around, how do we pilot this, and then maybe have the next council review the data, and, you know, either extend it or remove the sunset. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, any other final comments or questions from members of council? All right, seeing none, since this is in order.
Mr. Chair, one
Yes.
final comment.
Yes.
I remain open to answer any questions or providing additional information that anyone would like to see. I can, you know, be reached my direct extension. I can be reached at 576-2460. Most of you have most if not all of you have my cell phone. So please, if I can answer any questions, provide any additional information, do not hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. I'll make myself available.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Barnes. And with that, at this time, again, all the comments and suggestions are well said, as I think there's some tweaks that could possibly be made to the piece, but you know, I think it's almost ready. So this time I would entertain a motion to move ordinance substitute 1 to ordinance 22-035 out of committee to full council for a vote.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so properly moved and seconded. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, all right. The matter will pass to, we're unsure of the date it will be on. It may be the July 6th meeting. We'll keep everyone in tune, informed. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm gonna be excused.
Yes, you may be excused. I don't think you have anything else on the agenda. Thank you. And I do want to make a public service announcement, okay? I know I've gotten some outreach about this, and this may help some people plan their evening. So agenda item number 1, which is 23-022, an ordinance to amend reducing civil penalties regarding parking. Councilmember Cabrera. That is being held currently. To potentially be on the July finance agenda. So just wanted to give everyone a heads up. I didn't know many folks were tuned in for that piece. So again, the sponsor will keep everyone informed, as I believe there's still some more engagement that needs to be done. Also a prospective, even town hall regarding parking. So again, I just wanted to help everyone who was online for that, as I know that is a very important item. And that message was from the lead sponsor. She was going to hold it tonight. All right.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I know Director Brad Taylor.
We're going to bring those up. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right. So so now moving back to the agenda. All right. Again, thank you everyone for tuning in, and I apologize for the notice, as this was things always move on a dime here. So thank you. I want to move down to agenda item number 6. There's a set of ordinances, and lead sponsor is Vice Chair Harley. The first item, which is number 6 on agenda, is ordinance 23-015, which is an ordinance to amend Chapter 44 of the City Code to provide a property tax abatement for low to moderate income long-term homeowners in their homes. So I believe Vice Chair Harley is the lead sponsor. This is her piece. So floor is yours, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I make a comment, I know that Director Taylor is here, and I'm going to ask him if he would like to speak on it first, and then I will follow up with a comment. Is that okay, Director Taylor?
Thank you, Councilmember Harley. Good evening. I'm Brett Taylor. I'm Director of Finance. I'm not going to speak directly to the legislation, other than to say that at this point we really don't have a good idea what the values, how the values are going to change with respect to reassessment. When it does come, I know that there'll probably be some limitations built into increases in terms of the properties and how they're calculated with respect to revenue neutrality, some caps, some rates. So we're going to have, most likely when it gets done, we'll be back here perhaps a year from now having a pretty robust discussion about how this is going to impact the city of Wilmington. So, I don't want to comment or speculate on the fiscal impact of your legislation, but I'm sure that we're going to have the opportunity to really talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. So for the record, I just want to share with everyone that since I've been in this seat, I want to say since 2016, there has always been concerns around the development within the 4th District in terms of all the development that's taken place and the possibility of taxes being increased. And then, of course, when we learned about the Newcastle County assessment taking place, that conversation began to get deeper and stronger and more concerned. So listening to the community as it related to, number one, the redevelopment. As we know, with the redevelopment, taxes had not started to go up just because of the redevelopment. So I kept my eye on it and continued to talk with the individuals that I needed to talk to make sure that that wasn't an issue. But when the Newcastle County assessment took place and they implemented it, we all know that there is a possibility at this point in time for taxes to go up. So I really thought that this would be the right time to talk to the administration to find out what they would be willing to support. And so, of course, we did our due diligence within our city council staff, asking them to look at what some of the other cities are doing around the same topic. And we found out that our administration at this point in time could support a 50% of, if the taxes went up for more than 50%, the administration would support an abatement if it's 50% or more for low to moderate homeowners, given that they met the qualifications. And there are a number of qualifications for them to meet, but the primary purpose is if their taxes were to increase 50% or more. And so we know that we want to make sure that the assessment is completed and we know exactly what it is we're dealing with and what that impact is. So that is the primary purpose and impetus for this legislation, to definitely protect and look out for those that fall in the category of low to moderate income if their taxes increase 50% or more.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments from members of council? Okay, I think the only one I do have is regarding, I guess, the, is there a fiscal impact to this piece, council member?
So I met with the mayor and Director Taylor already. So we already looked at the fiscal impact, and based on the percentage of individuals that will fall in the category of low to moderate, it was definitely something that the mayor and the administration felt was doable. So there is going to be a fiscal impact of some sort, but as Director Taylor already mentioned, we don't know exactly what it is, but based on the numbers of knowing the population of the low to moderate population, we know that the 50% is something that can be supported.
Okay. No question? I have no further questions. Thank you for the clarification, Vice Chair. Any other comments, first round from council? All right, seeing none, I'm going to turn it to the public for any public comments or questions. All right, seeing none, then turn it back to council for any final comments or questions. This is Vice Chair Harley's piece, so she has a last word.
I'm just looking forward to my council colleagues. Well, first of all, this getting voted out of committee on this evening, and I already shared how this is definitely a piece of legislation that is coming from the concern from the community and from the population that will be impacted the most. So for those reasons, I would appreciate the support of this legislation getting voted out of committee and definitely on the floor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Vice Chair Harley. Since this is an ordinance, it has to be voted out, moved and voted out of committee. At this time, I would entertain a motion to move ordinance 23-015 out of committee to full council for a vote.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. The ordinance passes. So ordinance 23-015 will be on the full council agenda. I believe it may be the June date. June 15th.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And I believe you have another matter involving finance, Vice Chair Harley. This is agenda item number 7. Which is a resolution encouraging the Delaware General Assembly to support House Bill 62, an act to amend Title IX of the code regarding assessment of real property, which sets a requirement that the assessments occur every 5 years. Floor is
Yes,
yours.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So you pretty much mentioned what this legislation is all about. Yes, it's in support of State Rep. Medina Wilson's bill, HB number 62 that I feel as though is a companion piece to the ordinance as it relates to the assessment of the property in Newcastle County. As we know, these assessments have not taken place since 1982 or 83, and this bill will basically ensure that the assessment will take place every 5 years. So I thought that since it is all working together as it relates to once the assessment is completed, then we're going to learn what we're going to learn from the first assessment, and then hopefully we will be able to make sure this is done every 5 years to make sure that the impact is not as severe and it can be anticipated, and basically all those that can benefit from this assessment can benefit, and those that need to plan for it can plan for it. And that's basically it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any comments by members of council? Councilmember Bracey?
I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Okay. All right. And I'll turn it to public comment. Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, turn it back to council. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. I believe this is a long time coming. I know the legal fights that it took to even get here, and lawsuits involving the county, and there's a lot happened to get here, and I think we need a fair way for our residential and our commercial properties. So, I hope this crosses the finish line in Dover. And since this is a resolution, does not need to be formally voted out of committee, and it will be on the council agenda, I believe, June 15th. Okay. All right. So now I would like to, just going to move back up to the normal course of the agenda with the disparity report. Do we have anyone from the administration here to give any updates? Okay, James Williams.
Apologies, just have to wait for a brief moment. So thank you for having me, Mr. Committee Chair, Vice Chair, Harley, Council President Congo. Thank you for having me once again. Just going to give a quick update on the disparity study, progress that we've made so far. Thank you, WITN, for putting that presentation up. So I wanted to start off where we left off after last month's update. I wanted to address, first off, Committee Chair, your request for a timeline regarding the recommendations and how we're moving forward. As I started working on that and really thinking about how I would assign timelines, I realized that I wasn't necessarily comfortable providing, should I say, anticipated dates, and I'll explain why. Basically, obviously we're working to address the recommendations as quickly as possible, but again, it's very difficult to pinpoint completion dates, and I wanted to avoid a situation where I was constantly having to update those dates, as there are certain milestones that act as bottlenecks in a few instances. So what I decided to do was, as I give the updates, I'll try to give time estimates as we're getting closer and starting to work on things. I'll have a better idea of of some of those anticipated completion dates. So as I go through the updates today and going forward, I'll give my my best to give you a fair estimate of when I think we'll be completing the activities that we're discussing. All right, so if we're okay with that, I'll move forward to the next slide. All right, thank you. Again, I think we're going to discuss the same topics that we discussed last month. We've made some pretty good progress on quite a few of these. The first recommendation has to do with addressing the decentralized nature of many of the processes related to not only the DBE program, but just procurement in general. The first and probably what I think is going to be one of the most impactful undertakings will be to replace the DBE database with a more, should I say, modern tool that will allow a lot of self-service, but then also allow us to capture better data and to maintain data in a better fashion. So we've made some progress with this. The vendor has shared their master agreement since the last time we met, which I've discussed with legal and have gotten some insights on how we move forward with acquiring this online tool. They've also engaged the procurement team for some feedback on the process, and we're working through the agreement piece of that as we speak. So more to come there, but we are inching forward towards securing this application. Secondly, is just to mention that we are anticipating a resource which the Director of Finance and myself have discussed some of the potential roles and responsibilities going forward. So looking forward to in the new fiscal year, pursuing a new resource to do some of the compliance and oversight functions. I believe is going to be more of their role, a lot more to be ironed out and fleshed out, but something that we're certainly looking forward to and working towards. I think this will go a long way in addressing some of these disparity studies, should we say, recommendations to have a more active compliance and oversight function as a part of the city's procurement functions. All right, so we'll move on to the next slide, please. Secondly, wanted to discuss the recommendation to really broaden the community support around this space. As I discussed in the previous updates, we have some really critical partners who have been identified that have the infrastructure and support to help our businesses be more competitive with regards to bidding for city contracts. One of those that I've mentioned in the past, is Wilmington Alliance. Since the last update, I've referred a couple of businesses over to the Wilmington Alliance so that we can begin to provide support to these businesses and really get them set up with some services that will go a long way. One thing I wanted to mention is I don't want to call it a pilot, but one of the businesses that I think is going to be one to really look forward to is a new business who bid on their first city contract and came in second place. So I think for this particular instance, one new thing that we're going to do is do a post-bid debriefing. So I've reached out to the business owner. She's offered to basically work with myself and some of the community partners to take a look at her bid, look for areas of improvements, really get some insights from the city about what she could have done differently, how we can improve the bid, and kind of help her develop capacity going forward, so that even potentially for this bid, if it comes up again, they can have a better opportunity and potentially even win this project that they were interested in. And then another community partner being True Assets Capital with their New Markets Opportunities Initiative. We're looking for businesses that would meet some of the criteria of the target types of businesses that they've communicated they're interested in pursuing for their New Markets Opportunities Initiative. So we're continuing to monitor the bids that are going out. I'm now kind of in the loop when there's new bids that are being posted for advertisements. The procurement team shares those with me, and I push them out to our DBE community, but then also really try to match make and look for opportunities and help businesses that I know of and that I've come to know with regard to how they compete for these bids and provide support in a very targeted way. Next slide, please. WITN, next slide, please. All right, thank you. With regards to DBE training and really increasing our acumen with regard to procurement, diversity, and inclusive procurements, our office, have recently become members of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. to really get more engaged in regional economic development topics. They happen to be having a diverse procurement collaborative reception up in Philadelphia this Thursday, which our office will be attending. So looking forward to meeting some of the more regional partners and expanding our network of providers and potentially learning more about some of the practices that Philadelphia, which has been referenced a lot in our discussions with regard to the disparity study. But just taking in some information and also sharing knowledge with some of the things that we're doing and bringing that back here to the city. I've been continually monitoring other opportunities such as this, in addition to working along with organizations such as the SBA, which we have an upcoming call where we will be discussing doing some webinar series regarding procurement. So there's a lot of information that I will be able to gain from there. But a lot of these concepts that we discuss end up becoming part of some of the changes that we're looking to bring here in our city. Next slide, please. And then lastly, again, just I think this is just reiterating the importance of securing a, should we say, more modern technology to help manage the DBE process, the DBE program, but also potentially some aspects of the procurement process. So as I mentioned earlier, we're working to really bring this tool into the city. And it's not, it's a tool that primarily the Office of Economic Development, my role will utilize, but the information in there will be available for many resources in the city. So most of the departments will be able to, for instance, look up DBEs, be confident that the information that is in there is accurate, be able to do outreach and really target DBEs for some of the opportunities that will be available. I think that once we have this tool, we'll be able to address many of the other recommendations, such as doing really powerful and targeted outreach to increase our DBE database. So this is really a key kind of linchpin in the whole project that we have going on is to bring in a tool that will allow us to handle additional capacity. And I believe that's the last slide that I prepared. So I will pause and let me know if there's any questions, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. And again, we always appreciate your time. And I know we had a lengthy agenda today. This information was helpful, as I know this is just getting started. And similar to what I believe the conversation I had with Ms. Mergler, the mayor's office, when we were talking about the CARES Act report, if as we're going through this, it's going to be every month. So if you could maybe provide a graphical, if you look at the way the CARES Act report was, it was like color-coded graphical. It was like updates since the last month. In that way, it was like clear headings. And because what happens is this is not just for the committee, it's for the rest of council. And they're not going to really read into the small print. So we just have a little bit of an easier, again, I know this is new, but like an easier just graphic every month with the 5 key areas, and then say, okay, there's been no changes, or there's been a seminar, and just kind of keeping us informed that way. And that would be helpful. So you can give your presentation like you just did. It's just a little bit of a easier way for us to track the progress month to month, I guess. Okay.
Okay, I can. I'll reach out for some clarification, but I think.
Okay, yeah, it was exactly
we'll talk about
this. We had the same conversation with Ms. Mergler, and I think it worked pretty well. It just streamlines it because then we can come in with our preset questions, and then it's clear for members who aren't present. But like I said, we'll talk offline, and we can work with again Stephanie Mergler, I think got it, and also Tanny. Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments from council? President Congo?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. When did the city first receive this study, the disparity study? And when it was made public?
It was made public in February.
Okay, and I'm not sure if I might have missed it, but what have we done? What is already put in place, set in place that that the public can go and see, okay, this is where we were falling short, and this is the corrective action that is already in place. Not necessarily that was going to happen, but has already happened.
So I think a lot of what has already happened has happened at more or less at my level. It's the day-to-day activities. There's a lot that started before, really honestly, before the disparity study was completed. Just activities, like I said, doing more outreach, being hands-on, being available and participating actively in community events, and really promoting the DBE program. As a program overall, I think that we are moving towards where you'll probably start to see a lot of things start to happen more rapidly. We've been working on a draft of a program rewrite, which we're very close to finalizing, and will likely be engaging council staff to take forward in the near future. But we're not ready to commit to any dates on that just yet, but it has been discussed.
And just a follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
And would that information be available publicly?
At some point, I think that it would be, but I can't say for sure just yet. I believe it would be part of the program. Like today, we go in, we would see the DBE program as it's written and available on our website. I think this would be the replacement of that information.
Okay, I guess my concern is that that the public be made aware of changes that the city is making on an ongoing basis. Not a wish list of things that we want to happen or we hope that's going to happen, but things that we have already done and that are in place so the public can be just as aware as we are.
Okay, and I think that's my intention with drafting a document that will be the place where whether it be council or the public can see the program as it is being redesigned, and that will be sort of the program going forward.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Vice Chair Harley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would think that in this study, so it's broken down in several categories. So for an example, as it relates to President Congo's statement, when I think about procurement, and most of this study was around the procurement process, is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So a procurement process, from my understanding, is more like an internal process that sometimes it can deal with the system. So you could go from like a legacy system to like SAP or whatever that new system or different system may be. And I don't know sometimes if the public would know how to interpret some of those intricate types of system changes, but then there could be very distinct type of changes that would impact the public that they would be more interested in knowing about. And then of course, if it was something that would impact them. So the point that I'm making a comment, I guess, as it relates to this study and how it's rolled out and how you are looking at the different findings, because some of them, again, like I said, are going to be so internal, or it could be like how you process a check or how you put your bids out. I mean, so different aspects of the study would be more impactful, I would think, to the public, and then some would be more internally impacted in terms of the way the different departments do the work that they're doing. So is that going to be laid out in some type of form or fashion in terms of those types of changes?
I think it would be fair to say that we'll certainly explore the best way to share the information with the public, and keep in mind what to your point, what the DBE community, what the community in general would be interested in or find useful versus internal changes and procedural types of changes. So right now, the objective is to craft a program, right, which is includes everything from top to bottom. And then once we have agreement on that, and once we've worked with the legal department to figure out what requires legislative change versus policy and procedure, we will be able to craft a communication strategy that works for everyone.
One quick follow-up.
Yes, please.
So, have anything been implemented as it relates to, as a result of the study that was a corrective action that was identified? Has anything been implemented, even though it may not have been shared with the public?
So no changes have been implemented to any, or should I say procedural or policy changes have been implemented just yet, right? So we're getting near finality on the draft of the draft of the program we've been working on the past couple of months. So I think we're starting to move to a point where we'll be able to start to pursue making specific changes, but we're not there yet where we can start, changing department procedures and policies and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? First round of questions or comments? Okay. I have Councilmember White. First, I would like to recognize you. Welcome, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello to my other colleagues. My overall question regarding this process to the administration is, what are the measurable outcomes you're looking to obtain or share with council? This process seems to be one of noting the problems and noting some of the possible solutions. But at the end of the day, what can the community measurably expect from all of this effort?
And part of the process, thank you, Councilmember White. Part of the process is identifying metrics that will allow us to measure success, right? So, what does DB participation look like? What's the amount of engagement we've had? I think presently there isn't a lot of information that we have available to historically be able to even quantify some of the basics. So initially, right, getting some of the proper tools in place and crafting a program that I think that will address the recommendations and using those as our guide, we'll be able to get to where we can have some appropriate reporting and some information to help manage the program.
Mr. Chair, may I have a follow-up?
Yes, please, Councilmember.
Mr. Williams, I've personally been involved with this issue for the last 12 years, the last 3 or 4 administrations. It comes down to, and no reflection of you, but it comes down to lip service. It comes down to the fact that we're even having this conversation in the year 2023 because we know the participation from Black and brown people is woefully inadequate for a city of this size interacting with its central government. And so when you say things like, we have to look at the DB participation, or we have to do this, I mean, clear slate and with all due respect, what we have to do is carve out a policy that ensures minority participation in everything the city does. I mean, you want to go back and qualify what we've done and what we haven't done. Why? Because we know that's been a waste. That hasn't gotten us, that has not moved the needle one bit. So I'm just going to share my feelings, because whatever policy comes back, I'm going to be looking for measurable, quantitative things, and I'm going to be looking for hold the administration accountable on these measures. We cannot keep having this conversation with every other administration. No other questions, Mr. Chair.
And just to clarify, what I was referring to is, how we do that going forward, right? What the new program looks like, and actually taking action. The disparity study looks back, right? So everything that I'm talking about is the future and what the future program will entail. In order for it to be managed properly, you have to have good data. So right now we can't capture some of the key metrics that we need to be able to measure the program and departments based on. So that is all in the write-up that I was describing. I think it's going to be a good starting point, and appreciate your patience as we bring that to finality.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to now turn it to the public for any public comments or questions. All right.
Well,
Seeing none, I'll turn it back to council for any final comments or questions. Hopefully, Council President Congo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm very disappointed that 5 months into, after receiving the disparity study, we still don't have one solid thing that we've done, if I heard you correctly, as a corrective action. That's not acceptable. We want to be patient, but at the same time, there has to be some sense of urgency around what's going to be done. And I just don't see that right now. I hear a lot of hypotheticals. I hear a lot of we want to and we're going to, but at some point we have to show that we're serious about this. And I just don't see that. I'm not involved in the day-to-day. So I don't know. I don't know the answer, but just listening to this report is very discouraging. And I'm sure it is for a lot of my council colleagues and for people in the public who are watching. But it seems like this conversation should have happened, or we could have had the same conversation a month after we received the disparity study. What happened 5 months later? So those are just my thoughts. I just think that we need to have a sense of urgency, and I hope that when our next committee meeting, that when you are on the agenda, that we have something that's tangible. And if we can be a part of helping that happen, or if anyone in the public can be a part of helping that happen, I don't know. I just can't see us being 6 months in and just still talking about hypotheticals. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I just want to, again, for me, the chair, I echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Respect the work OED is doing, but we do need to see something tangible. We are lawmakers, so I understand there's a lot of underlying policy issues, but part of the recommendations from, I've read the report, and part of the recommendation is actually statutory and ordinance changes, law changes. So maybe, that's a conversation we can get going right now. We have some tangible legislation we can get separated through. While the other stuff is working, but some tangible legislation to at least take this first step. So again, I think we need to talk a lot more offline about this, but yes, I know this is a priority for council. So we want to see some definite steps, I think, in the next month or so. And Councilmember White, and then I have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Williams, forgive my enthusiasm regarding this matter. Not to throw you under the bus in any way, but as you look up at my colleagues, I believe, including myself, you have 4 minority business owners. And I'm going to echo the council presidents. If there's something we can do to help, we want to help. But you have 4 minority business owners at least, and you might have more on council. And I think what the president is saying is to use us. We know the issues just as well, if not better than most. And I think when you have this robust talent of minority business owners that have the ability to affect legislation, I think you'd want to reach out to us, or hopefully you'll reach out to us, and we can constructively handle this conversation and move it in a direction that I'm sure you want and the administration want and council president wants, which are measurable, quantifiable action steps. So again, Mr. Chair, thanks for the floor. No other questions, comments.
And Councilman Bracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say first, thank you, Mr. Williams, for always being willing to give us these updates. I know that it's you have a great task at hand for a small office. I do want to say that I think that what we maybe are missing is the fact that the infrastructure wasn't in place. The disparity study made it very clear that the infrastructure was missing to actually really support the DBE program the way it needs to be done. So I think where the disconnect is we're not seeing as much movement as we'd like to, because we need to build infrastructure. And from what I'm understanding, it sounds like a lot of what's been happening behind the scenes is the automation of the process. It's a lot of the things that aren't really that tangible, because you can't see the fact that you're buying a software program so that DBEs can now register online. So we can't see that. So we hear what you're saying, but I think that might be where some of the challenge is, because it's not anything tangible. There was a very successful procurement event at the library. So there's one thing that I know you guys played a focal point. You know, you were a large part of being there. So there's something. So I think in thinking through, you know, your next, you know, update, it's looking at those kind of the tangibles that aren't so much about the building of the infrastructure, that might help us all on council see where we fit into solution building with you. We do know that there are policy issues and challenges that we're going to have to address. But again, if we don't even have the data, you know, I think it was last month when you were here and I asked you how many DBs do we have registered, you could tell me that. But as far as the breakdown of the data of, you know, what they need and what you're doing that now. So I think the challenge is, while you're doing that and reaching out to these 100 DBs that are already on file, before you even try to get the rest, it doesn't seem like it's just stuff that's happening behind the scenes in your office, which we appreciate. So I don't want you to leave this meeting thinking that we're not appreciative of the work that you're doing, you know, because you're a one-man band trying to, you know, rectify an issue that's been ongoing for years. But to what my council colleagues have all said, please reach out to us, however we can support, however we can, you know, be in on, you know, how do we solution build some of the policy pieces that need to be in place to support the infrastructure piece, so that when you're rolling this all out, there is something that we can come to the city and say, here was the issue, here's the solution, and it's clear, and here's how you can be a part of it, City of Wilmington business owners, and doing business with the City of Wilmington. And you have council members that are entrepreneurs that can be a part of saying, this is how you do business with the city. So even arming us with talking points. This is how you do business with the city now. This is where you go if you're interested in learning about being certified as a DB. Even if you came back next month with that information, I think that's one thing that we can then now go to the community and say, hey, look, we're rolling out a whole new program, but in the meantime, this is James Williams. He's the director. This is how you get connected to supports for small businesses, and this is how you can get involved with doing business, or you can learn more about doing business with the city. More to come. And then that way, at least now we have something that we can start to share and say, hey, we're acknowledging the problem, we're working on the problem, and in the meantime, here's something that we can do. So just some points of consideration for the next update, to maybe, you know, that way you can help us help you, if that makes sense, with, you know, how do we really support our local businesses and our entrepreneurs to get the word out that we are making changes and we're not just giving, you know, more lip service saying we're working on something and we're really not. If we're working on it, let's show how we're working on it. Even if we're still in process, then I think that's something that we can start to use when we're talking to the community and saying, you know, in the meantime, here's how you get certified. Because they can still apply now to be certified, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
The process is still live and active. So-
Okay, so even that piece of information right there would be helpful for us to have, because then if we, you know, there's an entrepreneur that wants to learn more about how do they get certified to do business with the city, we can be telling them that now, not before the rollout. We can be telling them that now.
Absolutely, yeah. Nothing has changed. So I field calls and certified DBs every week. So yeah, appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And Council President, I believe you have some final words.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Councilmember Bracy brought up an excellent point. I just want to know if there's any truth to it. She brought up that, for the most part, that Mr. Williams might be a one-man band. So I guess I would want him to address that first, and if he is, I think that's an issue that we have to take a look at. Because something that is significant as a disparity study and how much effort and money was poured into it. And if we only have one person as a focal point, he doesn't have a team of people addressing and helping him with these solutions, I think that we have to take a hard and fast look at that, like, immediately. So, Mr. Williams, are you, for the most part, a one-man band? Are you doing this for the most part on your own?
So I would say that I'm the perhaps front man of the band, but every department is engaged. We have been having monthly meetings, but they were bi-monthly, every other bi-weekly for a while. We're down to monthly now, as we near kind of a more final version of the rewrite. So, as I mentioned, I think that you'll have some more information in the nearer term, which I hope will clarify a lot of questions and concerns.
Okay. Do you think that you would be more successful if you had more people around you to help, or you think you're pretty much on point?
I think that we're making good progress,
Okay.
and I know that in terms of some of the things we are anticipating, some of the planned changes, we are working on additional resources to help manage the program on a day-to-day basis. So I think that we've had a great team. I think the departments have all been very engaged. All of their feedback is how we've gotten to this point. So I think we're nearing a point where we'll be able to share more information soon.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Bracy?
And to
Final word.
follow up on Council President, did I hear in your presentation that the Director of Finance requested a full-time equivalent in the budget this year to add another person? Is that correct?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
That is
Finance Director.
Okay.
we have placed the requisition for the hiring process. That is going to start, obviously, that person starts July 1st because it's a FY24 budget, but we've started the process of hiring that individual.
So, Mr. President, that might address.
All right, thank you.
If I could add
Yes, Director.
that Mr. Williams has been engaged with the Department of Finance because we have the procurement side. We are technically we are the contract processing portion. Most of the departments make their arrangements and hire the individuals or look for contractors based on their specifications in their bids. We work through the internal process, meeting all the rules and specifications of city code. And the new DBE administrator in our shop is going to be looking at the data, registering the vendors, making sure that they're all getting their packages, et cetera, et cetera. So, we're working in tandem with the Office of OED to make sure that there's back office infrastructure available for them to be able to do the outreach and have the DBE DBEs come in and give us the information necessary to get their bids.
And I believe OED, Director of Parks, is on as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, I just wanted to say that I think some of the confusion around the implementation has to do with how we're presenting this data. We will take the suggestion of the Finance Committee Chair and just look at the overall picture of how we're making progress on some of these recommendations. If I could point to one document, I would point to the press release when the study was made public for some of the ongoing changes that the city has been making. And for next month, we'll kind of address more directly some of the changes that have been made since that announcement. So thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to the next update.
Thank you very much, Director Parks. If there's no other comments or questions from council, Ms. Basnight?
Yeah, Chairman, if I can just make just one quick point, is that the study had a lot of recommendations. It would be helpful within that report when we have these meetings, if it say like on page 2 of the report, recommendations such and such, this here is what we can have done. Because even when we go back to last month and the month before, we still don't know where we at as far as what corrective items has been taken. There's different items that require legislation, there's items that require policies, there's technical items. So if we can just track to say, hey, this is where we at, this is what has been done, that's gonna be very helpful to council, rather than just talking generically. Also, not to put Office of Economic Development on the spot, but when it comes to the DBEs, that's just one small part of his job. So I'm not sure whether, he wants to state that or not, but that's the reason there's another position that's been added. So I think it was mentioned before that council is here to help if there's a need for additional resources and to use that to your benefit. Thank you.
Yeah. And I wanted to state that thank you, Ms. Bass Knight. We are here to help. If another FTE is needed, there's always amendments to the budget done. Despite it passing, a few weeks ago, we always do mid-year changes anyway. So if we're finding that we're under-resourced, this is one field that is a key priority. So let's be resourced, and we'll have those conversations online. But if more help or assistance or software is needed, let's make it happen. All right.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much, Mr. Williams. All right. So now we do still have an agenda left, so I'm going to go through these as fast as possible. Item number 2 on the agenda is ordinance 23-023. So ordinance authorizing the city's general obligation bond for the new Clearwell project, which is a safe drinking water project. Is there anyone from the administration here to speak on that item?
Mr. Chair, I'm here to speak on behalf of the administration.
Okay. All right.
I'll make this relatively quick because
Actually, good if you could speak about all the items.
I am.
and-
Yeah, I would prefer to do that because they fit into a pattern. What we've done is we've reached out to the state drinking water state revolving loan fund, and we've been approved for 4 projects that we're presenting here. We have to pass individual ordinances in order for them to be allocated to a general obligation note, which will be included in the financial statements as part of our debt indebtedness. That ordinance will then go to, after the ordinance is passed, we'll have a bond committee meeting in which we will review and potentially approve entering into these indentures with the state. The good news is that these indentures are for improvements for the overall drinking water infrastructure that we have here in the city. A number of them, including the Clearwell basin, which is at the Porter plant, as well as some of the upgrades to the infrastructure of the technology that goes into monitoring the plants, such as motor control centers. Those are things that are going to be beneficial to keeping the operational things happening. The 2 other, which is 23025 and 23026, really deal with having us deal with the polyfluorinated substances. These are the PFAS. You'll be hearing a lot about those in the coming future in the drinking water, as well as lead contamination mitigation in the drinking water. The good news about this is that the state revolving loan fund will be providing us funding for the capitalization of these improvements at a 2% interest rate. To give you some perspective on that, the 10-year Treasury bond, which is usually where what we judge in terms of if we had to go out to the bond market, is currently at 3.6%. And if you were to take a tax equivalent yield for going out and bank borrowing, we'd be at between a 5 and 6%. So we're getting this money at a very, very low interest rate. Likewise, these are over 20 and 25 years. So the amortizations are relatively long. That means the interest payments will be spread, the principal payments will be spread out, which makes it budgetarily affordable. And lastly, two of the programs, particularly for the PFAS and for the lead removal project, 100% of the principal is forgiven. So we're talking about $23 to $24 million that would be forgiven. For instance, Ordinance 23026 has an $18.5 million principal value. Likewise, for 23025, which is the PFAS mitigation program, has a 4.8. Both of those projects are 25-year amortizations at 2% and with 100% forgiveness after the completion of the project. So we're getting this, we're getting funding, capitalization for the infrastructure at very, very low cost in assistance with the state. The much ballyhooed infrastructure Improvement Act that has been talked about in terms of the federal program, a lot of that is coming through they're not allocating it to the localities. What it is doing is being given to the state. It's being populated through the drinking water state revolving loan. So we're taking advantage of the Infrastructure Act as part of this package.
Okay, and Director Taylor, when's the last time we've done a clean water investment of this size for the actual PFAS and lead?
I believe we did 2 projects under the state drinking water last year. I would have to go back to my notes to see what the value was, but this is a pretty regular opportunity. The last go around, which I believe was in January or February, there was some loan forgiveness available with that. I think it was the 11th Street Connector project. What we're seeing more frequently now is going to be some of the loan forgiveness built in. But the state revolving loan fund has always been there, and we've always taken advantage of it because of the low interest rate, at least since I've been here. I will tell you that this is considered general obligation bonds. They're considered general obligation loan notes, and they will be attached to our overall indebtedness for the city. However, with the loan forgiveness, we're able to take $23 million off them relatively quickly.
Okay, very good. All right, any comments or questions from council? All right. Seeing none, I'll take see if there's any comments from members of the public. Seeing none, again, back to council for any final comments or questions. If seeing none, this is an ordinance, so it needs to be voted out of committee. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to move ordinance 23-023 out of committee to full council for a vote.
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Ordinance 23-023 will be on the has passed out of committee and will be on full council for a vote on June 15th. All right. The companion piece, ordinance 23-024. I believe Director Taylor has already spoke. Is there anyone from the public here to make comments on that item? Okay. Seeing none, I'll turn it back to council for any final comments or questions. Seeing none, at this time I'll entertain a motion to move ordinance 23-024 out of committee to full council for a vote.
So move.
Second.
All right, some property moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now moving to the next item on the agenda, ordinance 23-025 regarding the PFAS project. And at this time, is there any public comment in regards to this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn it back to council for any final comments or questions on this item. All right. Seeing none, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to move ordinance 23-025 out of committee to full council for a vote.
So move.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and last but not least, ordinance Ordinance 23-026 has already been discussed by finance. Any members of the public have any comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn it back to council for any final comments or questions. Seeing none, at this time I'll entertain a motion to move ordinance 23-026, which is a water distribution and transmission lead removal project ordinance, out of council for, out of committee for a full council vote.
So move.
Second.
All right, some property moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, ordinance 23-026 has been voted out of committee and will be on full council, will be on the council floor for a vote on June 15th, 2023. And last but not least on this packed agenda is ordinance 23-016, which is an ordinance to amend chapter 37, the city code, to require Department of Finance to prominently display the statute on parking violation notices and notify parking violation recipients of their right to appeal. The sponsor is Councilmember Spadola. Are you still on the line?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to hold the legislation.
Okay, all right, very well. All right, well, that makes it very easy. Again, I know there's some parking-related items, and as I discussed earlier, those will be fully vetted and discussed. Councilmember Cabrera, as well as Councilmember Spadola, I know are working with the rest of us, and we will have more updates when they're ready soon. So again, I appreciate everyone hanging tough with us tonight. It was a lot to get through, but a lot of important business, so thank you, everyone. As always, you can always email us on council or give us a call if there's any comments or questions. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the July meeting. This time I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All right. All right. The meeting has adjourned. Thank you, everyone.